Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Donna Feazell, and I'm your host of Donna's Edge Talk Show, where truth matters. You can find us on the radio at icradio.media, where you can find all kinds of information there. We're Fox News affiliates. You can also find us on television, Channel 182, Charter Communications, Abundance Television, found on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. And don't forget the podcast. The Newscaster Studio. Go straight to the Newscaster Studio, thenewscasters.com. And another thing you can do is download the app. I love it because it's quick. All I've got to do is just look at my iPhone or your Android and just click right here, and you'll be able to see all kinds of great programming. Lots of fantastic talk show hosts are associated with the Newscaster Studio. As a matter of fact, the head honcho is with me right now, Murray Edwards. I had to beg him to come on the show because he is so busy.
All you gotta do is pick up the telephone or send me a text message. You know, anytime.
Well, I love my shows with you. I absolutely do, because they're so truthful. We don't hear truth a lot anymore when it comes to politics.
No, we don't. We were talking before you started the recording. We're talking about some of the corporate media outlets, especially some of the print media. They just might as well just hang the name tag DNC to them and just realize that all the propaganda that they put out there is aimed in one form or fashion at one particular party, to help one particular party and to shoot the other particular party down the best they can. So, it's nice where we're on our platform and on your platform. We've actually got folks who are talking about some of the stuff that people really need to know to make a decision. You just can't go by what some of these media outlets are putting out there, because it's sadly just so biased that and again, sadly, there's so many people who watch and read some of these publications that they just take it for granted that what they're reading, what they're being told, is the truth. And for the most part, it's the furthest from it. So people have really got to wake up and do their homework, do their own investigative reporting, I guess you might want to say, and find out the truth about what's being told out there, because there's a lot of misinformation. I'll use their term, misinformation, that's being shared out there that is truly misinformation. So do your homework, folks.
Absolutely. And one great example of this is Trump has been talking, I still call him President Trump, has been talking about, servers and people who are in this type business not being charged not being taxed. Mm-hmm. Well, it was a bad thing when Trump was saying it. Now copycat Kamala has decided she wants to say it, and now it's like the best thing ever. And I don't know that people were informed enough to even know that Trump was the one who came out with the whole idea.
Yeah, he came out on it on June 9th at one of his rallies. I can't remember which one of those rallies that he did, but he came out with that topic on June the 9th. And then Kamala, last week, I guess it was, mm-hmm. She came out with it. And the funny thing about it is CBS News came out when Trump made that comment and said it was going to cost the taxpayers $288 billion, somewhere around that area. Yeah. And when Kamala basically said the same thing, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, from the same news network. Mm-hmm. So that's where I'm leading to, folks. You got some folks out there that if it has anything to do with a conservative, with a Republican Party, they're going to try to spin it to make it look like it's the worst thing in the world, And then shortly thereafter, now let's not forget, J.D. Vance came out with a increase for child tax credits for $5,000, mm-hmm. and it sort of got pushed to the side. Well, Kamala comes out with one for $6,000. And everybody just says, hey, this is just wonderful. She's thinking about the small people. She's thinking about the people. But, in that same breath, she talks about price gauging, as she said.
Yeah. Gouging.
Yeah, it's supposed to be price gouging. I mean, there's really not that much proof out there that much of it goes on. And I've worked with small business owners for quite a long time before I started this little endeavor. And I could tell you the rules and regulations that the federal government puts on the business community, there's almost no way for them to do any kind of price gouging. The average grocery store right now is about 1.6, 1.7 in margin. That's not a whole lot. Now, corporate world may be making a little bit more than that, but they don't seem to understand the cost of doing business and what has to happen, and where they have put, I think Mr. Biden just last year, 860 some odd regulations that affect the small business community, also affects fuel and energy. And when you affect fuel and energy, it just feeds down the food chain. Everything's going to cost a little bit more. And for her to believe that there's price gouging, that we should be able to make sure that we price control everything. They tried it in Russia, it didn't work. They tried it in Venezuela, it didn't work. They tried it in Argentina, it didn't work. And they tried it back in 1970, 71, 72 under Mr. Nixon for gas and food and whatnot, and it didn't work. So the process and the procedures are far and few between. Now, she actually got some negative press on that. I was stunned that some of the liberal media actually came out and said, this didn't work anywhere else, so why does she think it's going to work now? But we shall see. The honeymoon, the halo, the rainbow, whatever you want to call it, for the next 4 or 5 days is just going to be unfathomable. I just can't imagine the kind of stuff that's going to come out of Chicago this week. And I told a friend of mine, I said, there's not enough bourbon in my cabinet right now for me to even want to begin to want to watch any.
I'm not going to watch it.
I'll read some headlines every so often, but I don't want to hear Mr. Biden or Jill or some of those folks. So I don't know. It's going to be an interesting 4 days, I guess.
Well, I want to talk about trust, and I want to talk about trust with Kamala, and I want to start it out this way. Okay, so my grandmother had dementia. Mm-hmm. Okay, we knew it before anybody else did because we were around her a lot. Mm-hmm. And you know where I'm going with this?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Okay, so some people were actually shocked when we told them she had dementia. They would say, oh, but see, they didn't live with her, or we didn't live with her. But what I mean is they were not around her all the time like we were. Okay, so the whole Democratic Party was shocked when there was an issue with Biden. There was a problem. Something was not right in the cognitive world that he was living in. Okay, so Kamala, just a few weeks ago, had said, oh, he's sharp. He's on top of it. I'm with him every day. He makes all these decisions. He does, and so does, the rest of them. They're all saying that. So she's shocked to hear that he has some issues,
Sure.
Getting older.
Sure.
So why did she not know this sooner? Like we did with my grandmother. You're with him every single day almost, and you're just now getting it.
I would have to think, and I'll give just this much of a benefit of a doubt, not much, that everyone in that administration knew exactly what was going on. My father had dementia, and I remember a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, Biden was actually doing not one of his speeches, but one of his many little press conferences that he gave so few of. And the camera went to his eyes, and I said, oh my gosh, he's got dementia. And my wife goes, what are you talking about? I said, look at those eyes. Those are the same eyes that my father.
My grandmother had those eyes.
That you can tell there is a look that a person gets in their eyes over time. And slowly, what do they call them? The fake clips or whatnot, when he would turn left, meaning to go right or walk away from, the prime minister of Italy during the event they had. You sit there and go, he's ill. Now, I don't wish any ill will on anybody. Yeah, if I don't like your policies, I'll tell you I don't like your policies, but I don't want anything ill to happen, bad to happen to anyone. I don't care who it is. Mm-hmm. The man was sick, and they had to know. And you almost have to think that they set this initial debate up with Mr. Trump on purpose, because they'd flown him around the countryside. He was in France and went from France to California and went someplace else, and then he showed up for this debate. And I'm sure the man was tired, but you could tell that he was not right. Period. They had to know. So back in the back of your mind, you sit there. They had this whole thing planned from almost day one. They knew he was never going to have enough stamina to complete the election cycle. And I believe, in fact, I pretty well know, I've been told some things that Pelosi just basically told him, said, you either drop out or we're going to do the 25th Amendment on you, period, in the discussion. And Obama pushed it. And people may not understand that the person who signs off on the 25th Amendment is the Vice President of the United States. She had to be in on it. There's just no two if and buts about it. She had to be in on it. Because, you know what, that Friday prior to it, I'm in it to win it, I'm in it to win it. And that Sunday, all of a sudden, a blurb comes out of nowhere. I'm not in it anymore. You sit there and go, okay, they finally got to it. You know, they finally basically says you step away and you can graciously vaporize into the sunset. If you don't step away, we're going to yank the presidency away from you. We're going to give it to Kamala. And it's just a sad state. And the sad thing about it, you know, Donna, is 14 million people voted for Biden.
That's sad. We noticed that before the first election with him.
Correct. 14 million people voted. Now, they had a makeshift primary. I mean, the Democrats did not really have what I would classify a true primary, but they had a primary in nature, because they kicked the businessman, and I cannot think of the young man's name, but they kicked RFK Jr. out of the party, basically saying you can't run. So he was the only person to get votes. They pulled their stunt. They have, and other people have used this term too, a coup. They ripped the nomination away from them, and Kamala has gotten absolutely positively no primary votes. She didn't debate anyone, and they ordained her as the new nominee for the Democratic Party. And the Democratic Party has the audacity to sit there and say the Republican Party is a risk to democracy. Well, folks, you just saw what was the risk of democracy being ripped apart by their own party, by their social elites, by the upper echelon inside the Democratic Party. They knew they couldn't win. They couldn't win with Biden anyhow. And they had to at least put someone in place that could build some energy. And I'll give it to her. She's pumped up a lot of people. But so many of them just don't understand what just occurred, or either they just don't care. I don't know.
But you can only take so many giggling out. I mean, it's just all she does is giggles. But I agree with you, except for one thing. And this is about getting to Joe Biden. It wasn't Joe Biden; it was Jill Biden that they had.
Yeah, I agree with you on
that. You remember after the debate with Trump, and she, like he's a 2-year-old, she walks up to him and just like gets right in his face, and she said, "You answered all the questions, Joe." I'm sitting there thinking, my God, if Phil said that to me in front of the whole world stage, I would say, "What do you think? I've got dementia or something?"
You had to think that
you couldn't see it then.
That Sunday when he got his call, or Saturday night when he got his call, that Jill and Hunter had to be two of the maddest people that ever walked the face of the earth. Because there was no two if and buts. If they had their way, her husband and his dad would still be running president. You know, whether she was doing something, you know, behind the scenes, probably. Who was? I guess the biggest question, Don, is who's been calling all the shots for the last 2 years? I mean, who's been putting all the policies together? Because it's pretty obvious that he's not had the mental capabilities. Now, he's had his good moments, but he's had more bad moments than he's had good moments. And you sit there and go, there's a lot been going on that he just doesn't appear to have any inkling as to what's occurring. So I guess the next question the folks have got to ask is, if Kamala were to finish this cycle up, and of course now there's talk, rumors, whatever you want to call it, people say, well, the next coup is going to be on Kamala. She's going to laugh one time too many. She's going to say something wrong, and boom, they're going to yank her out from underneath it. Now, I don't technically or legally, I don't know how they could do it now, but I guess
I think they're stuck with her.
I think we are too, but she'll be a puppet for somebody. And I think we all, whether we agree or not, I think we all could basically assume that with so many of Mr. Obama's former staff members being on Biden's staff, that he was pretty much calling the shots, from an administrative standpoint. But of course, that could be pure speculative. He could be the smartest man that ever walked the face of the earth.
I don't think so. So let me ask you a question about this, and this pertains again to Kamala. Okay, right now they're parading her around. She's just an angel of light, everything that the world always wanted. Okay, but there's an issue with her turnover of employees. Her staff.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a huge issue there.
Yeah, 92% of her staff left. They say she's basically impossible to work for. And personally, I can see it. There's just some people who have certain traits, and you can see it. Most people can. If they're observant, they can say, boy, I bet she's tough to deal with. And lo and behold, like I said, 92% of her staff have walked away from her. But I don't guess that's anything to walk away from. I mean, she's walking away from her open border stance. She's walking away now from Medicare for all. She's walking away from fracking. She's now for one. She was against it. So, which Kamala, somebody said she's learned so much under the 2.5, 3 years she's been under Biden. She hadn't learned anything. She's just pushed things to the side. Now she's doing you got to move to the middle to get to independence. Well, the move to the middle is to deny everything that you used to support. And, you sit there, where did she come up with this price fixing thing? Most people may not realize her father is a lifelong Marxist, and he's a professor of economics at Stanford University. Mm-hmm. So she could come by it honestly. She was raised by, one parent who has the Marxist agenda, and how else would she have it? She's not supported anything that would be classified freedom, financial freedoms or whatnot. She seems to believe, and a lot of her folks seem to believe, that the bigger the federal government, the better it is. And for most of us, we don't think that way. Government's supposed to only do one or two things. They're supposed to protect us, and if we need a little help, to help us out. They're not supposed to do everything in the world for us, because then we lose what control we have on our lives and on our families and on our businesses when the federal government comes in and says, guess what? You're not doing things right. We're going to tell you how you need to be doing things. And that's just not the way I was raised anyhow.
No, I was raised to have a little ambition about myself and to take a little bit of pride in what I do. And we're not seeing that. There's this laziness that is taking over our country. Okay, I wanted to ask you, because the Democrat convention is coming up. Mm-hmm. And I know Joe Biden is supposed to get up and say something. Do you think this will be his I'm getting back at everybody moment? Do you think he's going to do that?
I was just thinking about that myself, Donna. Would he stand up? He speaks tonight. And usually you don't have someone of any kind of authority speak on the first night. Usually it's, the Wednesday or the Thursday. You would think you would have the president of the United States speak on maybe on a Wednesday or Thursday, not the Monday of the show starting. I was thinking just that, would he stand up there and he's got to be angry. He's got to be mad about what.
And we've seen him angry.
Yes, ma'am.
He can get angry.
Would the situation occur that he just lost it on the stage and says, okay, they did this, they did this, they did that? That might be the only thing that I would watch, just to see, could he get through?
I want to see that.
Could he get through?
They go from one extreme to the other. They're going to go from I heard, the way they're, propping me up, to another, I'm getting back at them now. Yeah. They always do that.
He's got to be angry, but I suspect that this is going to be one of those rah. Thank you so much for what you did. Thank you for fixing the economy. Thank you for doing, you were the greatest thing that, from a presidential standpoint we've ever seen. You saved democracy. And according to Pelosi, he should have his face put up on Mount Rushmore. He's that important. He's that famous.
Famous for collapsing our economy. Famous for letting people through the border. I mean, if you want to call, I've got to ask you this question. I want to talk about the convention, but I got to ask this. Okay, so there was a time sanctuary cities were in big cities. Your Chicago, places like that. Yeah. We're getting them here. In the town of Albertville and Boaz, there's an issue. There's a problem, and so finally, the local citizens, are finally waking up and they're noticing a few things. I'm even noticing it in my own town. Mm-hmm. There's some things that are happening. You can see these little houses are coming up from out of nowhere and all this. So what's happened is some charter buses have been coming in with Haitians, and they've been dropping them off. and I know this area well because Phil and I used to have a store out there. It's off of Rose Road. Mm-hmm. It's on Rose Road and Highway 431 in Albertville.
Right.
There's a place that used to be a church, and so I guess it's not a church anymore. So they're dropping people off, and they're coming in with with duffel bags. Mm-hmm. To go to work is supposedly they're supposed to be sending them to work at these chicken plants. Mm-hmm. But the problem is it's different people every day. It's not the same people over and over again. Like you have a job, you'll be known that, I see that person on that getting off that bus every day. I wonder how he likes working at the chicken plant. So it's not the same people in it, and they're carrying duffel bags. I loved working at my job at GTE. I really did, but never once did I ever think I'm going to bring a duffel bag so I can spend the night there. I love it so much. Yeah,
there are busloads. It is occurring in Alabama. I believe, and I've actually got a phone call from somebody up that way. They just had a busload of Somalians that emptied out, in their little town. And we've had it in Opelika, where a busload would show up in a particular shopping center and people would come out and then they'd scatter.
Coleman.
It's happening everywhere. Florence has had a wave of it occur. So it is occurring across the state of Alabama. Now, Alabama's not a sanctuary state, nor, to my knowledge, I could be wrong.
Feels like one now.
I don't know that there's any city in the state that has classified themselves a sanctuary city or a county, but they're coming in. There was a policy that Biden had that he was flying in people from all over the world. The last note, I think it was like 300 some odd thousand people that he was flying into different airports across the country. And because they had filled out, the app that you could do on your phone, they'd complete the app on the phone, which would automatically give them some type of protection. And so they would be picked up and flown in. They weren't coming across the southern border. They were actually being flown in by the administration into places like Dallas, Arizona, Phoenix, and dispersing them. Now, they supposedly had stopped that particular program because there was some corrupt information that was being shared by some of these people, that were coming in. But it's truly amazing. I heard, so, well, we've got more jobs than ever. Well, we do have more jobs. However, there've been more Americans who have been displaced in jobs over the last 6 months, and more immigrants, legal or illegal, who have added jobs. So what you've seen is people, an American citizen, being pushed to the side, and an immigrant of whatever being able to come in and take that job. So we've had a big shift up to the tune of almost 1 million people, where citizens have lost jobs, but immigrants have picked up jobs. And that's in the stats. If you dig into the BLS, the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, whew, almost going to get that word out. You'll see where the shift is. And we've also got about 6 million people who have just stopped working. They've just said, I can't find a job. Now, what most people don't understand, that stat is not included in the unemployment. They take that 6 million people, they shove them to the side. So when you start seeing these unemployment rates, oh, it's coming down. Well, don't forget that some stats are not exactly what you think they are.
Playing with the numbers.
Correct. And it's not quite as good as people think it is.
Okay, Mary, my daughter-in-law is from Russia.
Mm-hmm.
My son married into people are much better people than Phil and I are. I mean, these people are absolutely amazing. So they actually went to Russia, and they adopt. You can't do this now, but this was back in the day. And so my daughter-in-law was 9 when she was brought here. Mm-hmm. And she had 2 sisters who were brought with her. So 3 sisters were actually brought to the United States. Good Christian home. These girls know what it's like to work. Mm-hmm. So no, it's not slave or anything like that, but I'm talking about they had responsibilities at home, and they were taught responsibility on what you need to do. But I've heard Larissa talk about this a lot. She is so proud to be an American citizen. As a matter of fact, Phil's birthday is on October the 2nd, mm-hmm. and the day she became an American citizen happens to be October the 2nd. So they celebrate together those 2 days right there. So it's absolutely amazing just to watch her. She is so happy to be an American citizen. And I said, so I was talking to her one day, and I said, so you were not given a bunch of several $1,000s to come over here? She said, no, I was brought over here by a wonderful family, but no. She feels it's a huge slap in the face.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
You had to jump all these hurdles to become an American citizen.
Yeah, I agree. We used to have a young lady who was from Guatemala when our kids were small, and she was going through the process of becoming an American citizen, and she babysat for us. And we still hear from her from time to time now. But her and her whole family all were from Guatemala. They went through the process, cost them, I don't know how much money to actually go through the process. I actually had to go back home to Guatemala for a while, and then came back and became American citizens. I think anyone who has gone through what needs to be done and taken the oath of the country, that it should be just absolutely devastated by what's going on, because they are now being treated like a second-class citizen, because they don't seem to understand, and many of the politicians, I don't think, just don't care that you've got a group of individuals who have done the right thing, but tens of millions of folks who have come across the border, they think that they deserve the same, I guess, comfort that being an American citizen gives you, the same rights. And when you read where cities like New York have spent hundreds of millions of dollars of the taxpayers' money to house some of these people, and some of these people, I know people get tired of hearing them, they're criminals, they're this, they're that. Just go take a look at just how many have come across the border just in the last year or so that have committed crimes. in the United States. It's terrible. We just had it down in Georgia, 6 months ago, where the gentleman came across. And they just caught a guy this week, I believe it was, or maybe it was last week. He was wanted in Peru, I believe, 22 murders. Mm-hmm. And he came across the border, mm-hmm. and they turned him loose. They run rampant across the country. Mm-hmm. It's truly, it's disturbing by so many means. I mean, I can't understand how one group of people think that that's okay.
Well, I mean, I know Charlie Manson was a horrible person, but you might as well let him out. I mean, well, why not? They've
let these people come in. There's no, unless they really do something bad. In fact, I believe Biden made a statement early on that, somebody asked him that if a illegal immigrant, or they're not calling them illegal anymore. That's a bad word. That's a bad word. But I don't care. They could call me whatever they want to. They're here illegal. You come into the country and you don't go through the right process. Well, guess what? You broke the law to come in. So as far as I'm concerned, you break the law, you're a criminal and you're illegal. But somebody had asked him, well, should a person here illegally get arrested for, I think, DWI? And he said, no, they shouldn't be arrested for that. Well, there's been a couple of situations where folks who weren't here in the country legally had gotten drunk and had wrecks and have killed some folks. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But he shouldn't be arrested for driving DUI. I mean, anyone who caught driving DUI should have something done to them. Whether you're here legal or not illegal. If you're doing something, again, that is illegal, you should be held accountable for it. But they just
if I owe $500 to the IRS, they can come and take me away.
Tell me about it. It's just really sad. And what a Harris administration will look like, because right now, between Harris and Walz, this is the most left-leaning political machine that has ever run for office in the United States. Mm-hmm. He's got ties. I'm sure you've read about it. He been to China 30 times. Mm-hmm. When he was teaching and was taking students over to China.
Where did that money come from, by the way? Because I know teaching salaries are not that high.
Yeah, I would not think. I don't know whether he was teaching in Minnesota where he's at right now, but if you're making $35,000, $40,000 as a teacher, and this was years ago, we have to figure where the money's coming from. That he was getting just a little of assistance from the Chinese government. So to me, he's tainted from that. He's got close relationships with someone who is a anti-Semitic professor that he thinks he's the greatest teacher in the world. So we have a very radical group of individuals who are wishing to run the country, and they're going to say anything that they can to try to get people to vote for them. And then they're going to flip on a dime. The minute the swearing in goes in, it would, the day they walk into the White House, it'd be worse than what Biden did the day he walked in, and he reversed 90 some odd orders that the former president, who had pretty much stopped immigration, was doing a pretty good job with oil and fuel. And it's truly a scary time for the country.
Oh, it'll be speed dial is what it's going to be. Absolutely, if this happens. Let's go into a commercial break, and we'll be right back in just a couple of minutes. Everybody hang in there.
Are you ready?
We all wonder what tomorrow will bring, but the future lays itself at the feet of the prepared and surrenders to the will of the persistent. It's not easy, but today shapes you so you can shape tomorrow. With Northeast Alabama Community College, when the future asks if you're ready, you can answer
yes.
Begin your future at Northeast Alabama Community College.
We are back. My name is Donna, and I'm your host of Donna's Edge Talk Show, where truth matters, even if it hurts. We're going to tell it to you. Because I got to live with myself, and I know Murray feels exactly the same way I do, Murray Edwards. There are some people who say, I'm not going to vote. I don't have kids. I don't have grandkids. I don't have anything. I'm just not going to waste my time. What do you say to that human who says that?
That's probably the most irritating thing I can hear people say. It just torques me in so many different directions. I can understand it, I guess, sometimes when it comes to a state election, because we have, legislators who get reelected time and time again. They've been there, they've been incumbent. But when you get to the presidential election, you're talking about whatever the direction this particular individual foresees the future for the country. And we've gotten a situation now to where so many politicians have gotten away from the Constitution and are just basically saying and doing whatever they can to get elected or reelected. But complacency in the electorate is a scary thing, because here in our state, we have a situation in District 2, which has always been a red district, could potentially turn blue. And what are the people in that particular district going to do to try to maintain the status we're a 6-1 state right now? We could be a 5-2 state. And the person on the Democratic side is pretty radical. So do we lose? We already know in District 7, we have someone who votes about 99% of the time with the Democratic Party. She doesn't care, who it's hurting, but she's going to vote that way. Mm-hmm. But complacency is a sad thing when they think, and you get back to, I guess we have to look at voter integrity, Donna. So many people don't think that their vote counts. Yeah. That there's not enough done to say, well, if I do vote, it's going to be counted the way it's supposed to be counted. And then you get into a situation to where, and if you take a look at the presidential election, really what happens here in the state of Alabama is we know who's most likely going to win the state. The decision is not going to come from the state of Alabama. The decision is going to come from Pennsylvania, Michigan, Arizona, Nevada, North Carolina. Those 5 states are going to be the 5 states that are going to decide who wins the presidency. The Republican Party will most likely never win the public vote, popular vote. The Democrats will most likely always win. They have, but the Electoral College which is what decides who is the president. He's got to get to whoever's got to get to 217 to win. And if the voter turnout is down, then we just sort of wash our hands. And I will give it to the Democratic side of the aisle. They are a get out the vote machine.
They sure are.
They know how to do it. They live and breathe it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the Republican side of the aisle seems to think it's seasonal. We'll get real active. There's 90 days left, in the election. Now we need to really get active. But the machine's already been in place on the other side. They're already gearing up for early vote. They're already gearing up for what they can do in some areas. And I've heard many Republicans, we need to do just day of voting. Well, I agree with that. I do think it should be day of voting. But when you got states who allow you to start voting in September,
I agree with you
that there'll be enough votes banked, potentially enough votes banked by one particular candidate that on election day, anything can happen. Anything can happen. And machines might not work. Storms may be brewing. You might be sick. You may not be able to get out to vote. And it's the amount of votes that have already been passed. You may not be able to surpass them on election day. And it's happened time and time again.
Yeah, hurricanes are pretty common that time of the year.
We had, situation last year up in New York. There was a special election, and early voting was going on, and there was a snowstorm on the day of election, and people couldn't get out to vote. Well, because there were so many early votes cast, they unplugged a Republican and put a Democrat in their place. So where there's early voting, whatever the rules are, folks, in your state, do it. If you can early vote, vote. If it's mail-in vote, mail it in. If it's some type of absentee, do whatever is being done in your particular state. Alabama, I will give credit to Secretary of State Allen. He is out. The voter integrity here in the state of Alabama has increased. We're now the second best state in the country, only behind Tennessee, when it comes to voter integrity. We've moved up from the 5th to number 2. And some of the things that he's doing here in the state will ensure that at least votes here in the state of Alabama are done the way they're supposed to be. He's put some things in place that will make it, your vote will count. If you go out and vote, your vote will count. And but it's complacency is the biggest thing that just irks me to no end when somebody rears back and says, well, my vote don't count, or I'm just too busy to go vote. Your opposition is, no matter who it is, the opposition is doing everything they can to get their people out to vote. And you just need to let somebody hear your vote. You're in situations, again, like in state, that particular candidate that is running, you might not be able to beat him or her. But if it's a bigger percentage than what he or she was expecting, it just might put a few hairs on the back of the neck standing up. So, I was supposed to win by 60%, and I only won by 20. Some people are upset at me. Maybe I ought to listen to them a little bit more. And that's the same way with local elections too. If you don't get out in your local elections, and you've heard me say it many times, Donna, it starts in the community. School boards, city councils, and county commissions, because a lot of those folks, guess what? They end up the next legislator in your state, and then possibly they end up in Washington, D.C. We've had several that started off with a city council member, and guess what? They're sitting in Washington, D.C. right now.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's all really interesting, how this whole thing works out. But if you only stuck with one group, if you only had one group of people, and that's Christians, people who go to church, whether they're Christian or not, if they voted, I don't know how many churches I have been to where half the congregation doesn't vote. That blows my ever-living mind.
I'm with you on that, because
if anybody ever had reason not to vote, it would have been my parents, because mother Republican, dad a Democrat. They voted, even though they knew they were basically canceling each other's vote out, because they both did straight ticket too.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dad would have never voted. He would have voted for Trump. I think he'd have.
Well, if he was an old school Democrat.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, he actually liked Reagan. I take that back.
Well, a lot of Democrats. You had the Reagan Democrats.
Yeah.
So he pulled some over, and I believe in some groups right now, you're starting to see a shift from the Democratic Party over to the Republican Party, because the Democratic Party has, for lack of better words, have lied to them for so many years that if you vote for us, we're going to take care of you. We're going to give you these social programs, or we're going to guarantee you jobs, and they haven't done it. Most folks aren't really out there wanting social issues. They want the opportunity to be successful.
Well, let me ask you this. So we're going to have a debate coming up with President Trump and Kamala. Okay. I feel the honeymoon. First of all, I don't think there was a honeymoon phrase. I just don't believe it. I think they were just pumping her up for something that she's not, like the ugly beauty queen, and just pumping her up, trying to make her feel better, maybe thinking that would give her confidence, feel better, or whatever. I just don't believe any of that nonsense. Okay, she's going to have to fight the economy. because it's not a good one. And she's had
No.
3.5 years to make it work. And I mean, okay, if she loved Papa Joe as much as she said she did, it looks like to me she would have, she could have had some input and to make it a much better thing than him running it. But anyway, so what does President Trump need to focus on with that? Because there's a woman now, and I'm saying this, I'm a woman, but I'm not going to vote for somebody just because they're a woman, because they're gay, because they don't know what sex they are. I want to vote for the best person.
Yep.
Like I would vote, hiring a person for my business. It's got to be the best one.
Yeah, I agree. Everybody keeps throwing this term DEI out, that she was a DEI. I'm with you, Donna. I don't care about the color of their skin. I don't care what sex they are. I don't care of any of that. Don't care if they're a man or a woman or whatnot. Who is the most qualified? Who's going to get the job done? And for all these people that are saying we've got to have, and you've heard it, we've got to have the first woman elected president. She'll be the first woman elected president. She'll be the first woman of color. Well, that doesn't make her qualified. So what Trump is going to have to do is just pin her down. He's going to have to make her answer questions because, she has said many times she was the last person in the room when she had meetings with Biden, when they were talking about policy issues. Now, I was the last person. So you would thought that if Biden was listening at all, and if she had these ideas, that she's changed her mind on so many things, that you would have thought she would have brought that up to him and say, we're doing this, we're doing that. Maybe we should change a little bit. And nothing's changed. So to me, they're tied at the hip. And what Trump will have to do is just nail her on it. Inflation, price of gas, jobs, they keep spinning the numbers that everything is wonderful now. Not if you really dig into it. It's not as good as they want you to believe that it is. And they can't understand why so many Americans don't get it. You're supposed to listen to us. You're supposed to, if we tell you inflation is down, you're supposed to believe us. If we're telling you Bidenomics is working, well, the economy is much better than you think it is. You're just not paying attention. Not when I'm paying $6.
Gaslighting.
When I'm paying $6 for a dozen eggs, that I was only paying $2 for a while back. But he's going to have to nail her on that. He's going to have to stop. And I sometimes I do think he gets off with the name calling sometimes and the picking. Now that's just his nature, I guess. He's always been that way.
See, I'm okay with that.
It really does irritate me. I get tickled at him because he's just, as I said, when I was working, he just is like any other business guy. He can be a what in front of people, but the minute you get them behind closed door, they're an entirely different human being. I worked with many of them across the country for years and years and years, but he's just that way. But he's going to have to really focus. And I believe he brought, what's the lady from Hawaii? Gosh, I'm blank. That used to be a Democrat that ran for president as a Democrat. I'm totally blank. I see her face, but I can't picture her. I can't think of her name right now. He brought her on to the campaign to try to help, get himself positioned to debate Kamala. Now, it irritates me that, she's accepted one on ABC, and there's two more that have been offered up that he has accepted, but she's not going to accept them because one of them is for sure is Fox News. She's not going to go on anybody that might say anything derogatory about anything that she says. I will give kudos to CNN, and that's hard to do because CNN has always been biased. That debate, they did a pretty decent job, but then you got to think about it, Donna. Were they towed? You've got to make Biden look bad. So they did whatever.
They didn't need much help.
No, they didn't need much help. But, you think about that for a second, that, they have been such a voice.
Like I believe Romney was told. I believe Romney, when he had his first debate with Obama, he made mincemeat out of Obama. I mean, he really did. And then that second debate comes up. It's like he was told to keep his hands tied behind his back.
I don't know. But he's going to have to really get on to her about, or not necessarily get on to her, but point out the differences and tell folks, if she was the last person in the room, she knew everything that was going on, and she's not made any attempt to correct them or make some suggestions. And, it goes to right now, she comes out with some of these new policies. Well, she's still she's still in the White House till January the 20th.
Why aren't you doing it now?
There you go. If you had this idea, why didn't you propose it, and why didn't you act on it? So it's going to be interesting. It should be somewhat entertaining.
I'm going to enjoy this one actually more than the one with Biden. I knew that was going to be a loser one there. And I think she's going to lose too, because she just she's not going to know how to conduct herself, and you can tell a nervousness because I've studied the different personalities and the different traits.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what I found. And I've noticed this in people when they're losing the battle, they start doing some kind of a nervous energy thing. Hers is laughing.
Oh, no doubt about it.
When she's about to lose, she starts the cackling thing, and she's gonna lose it. She will just. Here's what I wish Trump would say. Okay, we're not supposed to say if you're a man or a woman and all this kind of stuff. Okay, during the Olympics, it's okay for a man to be in a women's category and beat the soup out of a woman and almost kill her. You're okay with that. So now we got to call you and label you as the first woman president. Why do we have to label you? Are you a man you don't even know if you're a man or a woman. So, you need to get your facts straight. It's got to be one way or the other. We can't do all this different just to suit you and your party.
They did nominate a Supreme Court justice who could not define what a woman was.
Okay, let me tell you the fault I had with Tommy Tuberville.
Yeah, what did Tommy do?
Okay, so Tommy wanted to sit down and talk with the woman. She had already put it out there that she didn't know the difference, that she's not a scientist, so therefore she cannot distinguish the difference between a man or a woman. So Tommy wanted to sit down and talk with her about it. I sent him a private message about that. I said, why would you need to sit down and talk with her about anything if she doesn't know the difference between a man or a woman? Just don't vote for her. Just say no.
Yeah, I would think that I did not know Tommy. I missed that.
He needed to sit down and talk with her about it. He wanted to appear statesman.
Well, sometimes you got to put politics aside and just say, it is what it is. So
that's what I love about Trump. He doesn't give a rip.
He doesn't care
if you're a statesman or not. He just wants to get the truth out there, and that's what I like about him. And I don't care if he sends a mean tweet. I don't care less.
Tweets never bothered me.
It reminds me of my dad.
Yeah, I'm with you. None of that stuff ever bothered me. And if you're getting your feelings hurt because of what somebody might say about you, then it's time to get your skin a little bit thicker.
I was raised that if you got your feelings hurt that bad, that means you're not ready for that position.
Yeah, we could be. Yeah. I get into, I won't say arguments, but I do get into some heavy duty discussions for the kind of stuff that I do. And I always know when I'm winning, because all of a sudden the tone of the voice of the person I'm speaking with, having my discussion with, gets a little louder. And then all of a sudden words come out of that individual's mouth like, you're or this is, or what, how can you say that? And you sit there and you go, well, you're through with your talking points now, aren't you? And he what? That's it. as I've told, I think I've even said it on the show many times. Don't ask a question that you don't want an answer for. You may not like the answer, but you're going to get the answer. And if it hurts your feelings, sorry.
Didn't ask me.
There you go.
Most of my problem is coming from relatives, and who, they know more about the economy than Trump and all those things, And generally speaking, I just handled it. I just look at them. I just sit and stare at them. Then I'll say, "Are you finished?" And then they'll go on, still keeping on it. And I'll go, "I can't fix stupid." And
no, that's
agree the way you do. I agree the way I do. You're not going to change my mind. I'm not going to change yours.
I'm fortunate. All my kids, with exception of one, I don't know exactly where she stands on some stuff, but most of my kids and most of my grandkids are. They were raised by the dear old granddad, and the dear old granddad has never been quiet, soft-spoken about anything. None of them are very quiet or soft-spoken about anything that they do or say. So I don't have that problem with my immediate crew.
Not with my immediate, but beyond that, siblings and that kind of thing.
It is fun sometimes to have those unique conversations with close friends, because sometimes those close friends may not stay close friends after you have a confrontational conversation with them.
Well, the America that we grew up in it's at stake. It really is. We're risking losing it. And I'm going to tell you what, Murray, I think you and I lived in the best era ever. We grew up in the best era. And it's so funny now to look at kids, and you tell kids about, remember my parents going to town, not locking the door.
Sure.
And we lived in the city. We lived in a subdivision. I grew up in Oxford.
Yeah.
But my dad would leave the keys in the car.
Yeah. You didn't have to worry about that kind of stuff.
Do that now.
Yeah, it's a shame. There's parts. I grew up in Montgomery, Alabama. I call Montgomery home. There's parts of Montgomery I would never go to anymore. Just they're war zones.
In the daytime, let alone at night.
Anytime would I ever go to Montgomery for in certain parts in the area that I grew up in. It's a war zone. It's just, and the politicians have allowed that to occur because I don't know whether you want to call it a form of reparations, but maybe it is, because this one particular group of individuals have been kept down for so long that we will allow them to do pretty much anything that they want to, as long as it's not too severe. But just last month, they had a shooting in North Montgomery. They had over 500 people at a spur of the moment get together. They had 600 some odd rounds of ammunition that was shot during that little get together. They found machine gun, they found an AK-47, they found handguns, and police department couldn't do anything about it. Overloaded the hospitals in the city of Montgomery, and every day it is something. Montgomery, Alabama has become what I would call a mini Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
It's just terrible. And Montgomery's not the only place. Birmingham, parts of Birmingham, parts of Huntsville, parts of Mobile, even in some of it's sort of fed out now into some of the more rural cities and counties where you would have thought some of the things that, as you say, leaving your door unlocked or not locking your car or leaving things in your car, knowing that when you came back, it'd still be there.
I don't do that here.
Yeah, it's a shame. It truly is. But your generation was, I guess we were spoiled. We don't realize it, I guess, Donna, but I guess we were spoiled to be able to say what we wanted to, do what we wanted to. You stayed out of somebody else's business, then other people would leave you alone. And, nowadays it's you're almost scared to say anything about anybody, about anything, because, they're going to sit there and go, well, you're not a good person.
You're offended. Murray, we're going to have to call it a day. I can't believe you're not offended at me.
Why?
Thank you so much for being a friend. I definitely
I
appreciate
enjoy
it.
it all the time. I enjoy it all the time.
Absolutely. I do. And thank you so much for watching. I know you could be doing anything else, but you're watching us. And we definitely appreciate, well, I have good guests. That's the only reason you keep coming back.